There is a special place on Earth that is known for its turquoise waters, white sandy beaches, rhythmic music, vibrant festivals, and of course, its delicious and mouth-watering cuisine. I'm talking about none other than the Caribbean, baby. In this episode, we're going to be jumping from island to island, talking about some of the most beloved dishes that the Caribbean has to offer. But of course, we have to answer the golden question: how do these dishes stack up when it comes to your health? And make sure to stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to be giving Caribbean cuisine a health rating out of 10, especially as it compares to some of the other cuisines that we've discussed on this channel. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Dr. Emile and I am a naturopathic doctor on a mission to show the world that healthy doesn't have to be hard. I hope you're ready to move your hips as we dance through this episode. This is Wellness Without Borders, Caribbean edition. Before we go on with the video, take a look down in the description. I've included a link where you can sign up to receive 3 free recipes where you can make delicious Caribbean food at home on your own. This recipe guide is completely free, and if you do end up making any of these recipes at home, leave me a comment. I would love to know how your dishes turned out. Let's start off with a protein that is probably the first food that comes to mind when you think about Caribbean cooking. I'm talking about jerk chicken. Jerk chicken is so much more than just a spice rub that you throw onto your chicken. Rather, it's an entire cooking process. Traditionally, jerk style cooking is actually done by creating an underground oven, for lack of a better word. And the combination from the spices and the smokiness of the burning wood is what gives jerk chicken its quintessential flavor. Jerk chicken packs a big protein punch, and because of that, I'm gonna start off strong and throw jerk chicken all the way up in the S tier. Of course, when you think about protein options from the Caribbean, you also think about the beautiful fresh fish that can be caught daily off of the shores. And one of my favorite and healthiest fish options is grilled snapper or escovitch. Oftentimes prepared whole, covered in spices, onions, and peppers, escovitch can either be grilled or lightly pan fried. Escovitch grilled snapper, you're gonna find yourself all the way up on the S tier next to jerk chicken. Now there's so many other fish dishes that are so delicious that you can find down in the Caribbean. From marlin to kingfish to swordfish to mahi-mahi, barracuda, flying fish, even shark. But there is a problem when it comes to eating fish in the Caribbean, and that is folks from the Caribbean love to fry their fish. And if you've watched any of my other episodes, you will know that deep frying food is one of my least favorite ways to prepare it, even though it's quite delicious, I'm not gonna lie. At the end of the day, this is a health channel, so I gotta be real with you. One of Barbados's most beloved dishes is fried flying fish. Barbados actually has a unique way of preparing flying fish where they fillet it open, bread it, and pan fry it on both sides. Oh, it's so delicious, but drenched in oil. And so because of that, I'm gonna have to put fried flying fish down on the C tier at best. At least we're getting some protein. Another fried fish option that comes to mind is Trinidadian shark and bake. Battered and fried shark meat in a sandwich, but get this, even the bread of the sandwich is fried. Now, if you've ever had a Trini bake, you know that that thing is delicious. But at the end of the day, when it comes to your health, no bueno, my friends. Just like fried flying fish, you are getting a decent amount of protein from the fried shark, and so I'm gonna go ahead and put shark and bake in the C tier today. Now, there is one type of fish that deserves an honorable mention, and that is salted cod, or simply put, saltfish. You will find saltfish dishes across the Caribbean, from Trinidad to Barbados, Jamaica, and so many more. A common saltfish appetizer in Trinidad is known as buljol. It's boneless shredded saltfish with various spices and vegetables that you can scoop onto crackers and enjoy. Saltfish is delicious, super high protein, and really quite good for you. The only caveat when it comes to saltfish is, as the name suggests, it's really quite salty. Sodium levels of saltfish can be reduced by soaking the meat in water prior to preparation, and this also makes it a little bit more palatable as well. Buljol is a wholesome and healthy Trinidadian snack, and because of that, I'm gonna put it all the way up in the A tier. Now, saltfish can also be the complement on various other cultural dishes. Barbados is known for its cuckoo and saltfish, and Jamaica is known for its ackee and saltfish. Cuckoo is actually the national dish of Barbados and can be prepared a whole set of different ways, from cornmeal to green banana cuckoo. Think about it as kind kind of like a cornmeal or even green banana mash covered in gravy, and then you get the protein from the salty saltfish. Bajan comfort food at its finest, but of course it can be calorie dense, so we have to be cautious of portion. Because of that, I'm gonna put cuckoo and saltfish in the B tier. Similarly, I'm of the opinion that ackee and saltfish should be treated more or less about the same as cuckoo and saltfish, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the B tier today as well. Up next, we have the Jamaican classic curried goat. Now, curry is a staple flavor profile across the whole Caribbean, and this is because over decades and centuries, it's really become a melting pot of culture and flavor. Everything from African influence to European influence and even Indian influence, hence the curry. But out of all of the curry dishes in the whole Caribbean, curry goat has to be my favorite. It's dense, it's meaty, it's rich, there's so much flavor. But it does have a tendency to be a little on the fattier side depending on the cuts of meat that go into the stew. And so because of that, I'm gonna go ahead and put curry goat on the A tier today. Another rich stew that needs to be mentioned in this episode is pepper pot. Various islands have their own versions of pepper pot, but the one that has the most notoriety is probably a Guyanese pepper pot. Pepper pot is such an interesting dish because traditionally the pepper pot was something that was constantly under a low, slow cook. And as new ingredients would come into the house, one at a time, they would be added to the pepper pot. An old school traditional pepper pot will oftentimes cook for days, sometimes weeks. And as time goes on, the flavor profile changes slightly as you add new ingredients to the pot. In many parts of the Caribbean, the pepper pot is a Christmas dish that you'll walk into somebody's house and probably serve yourself right off of the stovetop. And even though it's rich in protein, micronutrients, and even marrows that are breaking down from the bones that are stewing for so long, it's also pretty common to add dark coloring and even brown sugar to the pot for flavor. And so I tend to be cautious when I hear that sugar has to go into a recipe, and so because of that, we're gonna put pepper pot in the B tier today. Up next is a Saturday afternoon special, especially in Barbados. I'm talking about pudding and souse. And yes, that's souse, not sauce being said in a funny way. It's actually called souse, S-O-U-S-E. This is another dish that can take over 24 hours to prepare, so making souse is not an easy task. But what is pudding and souse? Well, the souse itself is actually pickled pork, oftentimes the remnants of what was left over from the good meat. Thank you, colonialism. And this pork is also pickled with finely sliced cucumbers and hot peppers. The meatiness of the pork, the tanginess of the pickle, the coolness of the cucumber, and the spice from the peppers. It also sits on a bed of roasted breadfruit, so you get that starch to hold everything down. And then of course the pudding that's on the side. In Barbados, the pudding is usually a mashed sweet potato to add sweetness to the dish. And then it's traditionally darkened using the blood of the animal that produced the souse. Sometimes when I describe what pudding and souse is, a lot of people don't want to try it, but this is one of the most delicious cultural foods that you can find in the Caribbean, especially if you find one that is made really well. And every time I eat this dish, I also think about the cultural implications of it and how folks hundreds of years ago had to make do with what they had and make it palatable and in many ways make it delicious and enjoyable. And it's such a beautiful representation of where we are today in our society compared to those dark days of colonialism and slave trade. Pudding and souse does have high protein from the pork, but can also be calorically dense, quite rich, and fatty depending on the cuts that you get. And so because of that, we're gonna put pudding and souse in the B tier today. Now, everything that we've talked about to this point can be categorized as a generally heavy meal, but where are the Caribbean snack foods? Well, I guess we already talked about shark and bake, but there's a couple more that we have to mention here. First up, we've got the Jamaican beef patty. Now, while one could argue that the ground beef inside the patty does provide a reasonable amount of protein, the problem with the patties is actually the crust itself. That's because the way that these patties get their flaky texture and flavor is because it's filled with vegetable shortening and vegetable oils. And so I just don't think that I could put it any higher than C tier today. This next one I'm going to get a ton of heat for. Oh my God, I already feel it. But I'm talking about the famous Trini Doubles. If you've ever had a Trini Doubles, it's like a flavor explosion in your face. You get the savory from the curried chickpea. You get the sweet from the tamarind chutney. You get the tang from the pickled cucumber. You get that herbal aromatic from the cilantro. And it's all wrapped up in a fried dough. And it's called doubles because you get two of them. Now, even though this is one of the most delicious snack foods I honestly have ever had in my life, I literally had one 2 days ago. When you size it up, it's actually quite unhealthy. It's super calorically dense. The dough is deep fried. The tamarind chutney is loaded with sugar, and it's probably something that you should limit your consumption of as much as possible. But today, my friends, I am sorry, Trini Doubles are gonna find themselves all the way down in the D tier. Oh no! All right, let's redeem ourselves with one of the healthiest dishes that you can possibly find in Caribbean cooking. I'm talking about callaloo. Now, if you grew up in the Caribbean, chances are when you were a small child, you probably didn't like callaloo, but you had to eat it because if you didn't eat it, you were gonna get a slipper in the back of your head. Good old-fashioned Caribbean parenting. Callaloo is a dark leafy green from the amaranth family, and it's usually cooked down into a soft, stewy consistency. It's cooked down with peppers, onions, and various seasoning, and can either be kept vegan or you can add protein, anything from ham to shrimp or even tofu if you want to keep it vegetarian. Like I said, callaloo is one of the most nutrient-dense foods across the entire Caribbean, and as a result, we're gonna put callaloo all the way on the S tier today. Up next is another very healthy vegetarian dish. I'm talking about green banana salad. This gut-healthy starch can be made by taking unripe bananas and boiling them down, mixing them with a variety of vegetables, and you can even add protein if you want to. The only thing that I would be cautious of is it does get its creaminess from mayonnaise. And so as long as you're cautious with the amounts that you have, I think that all in all, the ingredients are so delicious and so good for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and put green banana salad in the A tier today. Another starch that deserves attention is one of my favorites, and that is breadfruit. Usually when we think of starchy sides, they grow in the ground like root vegetables, but breadfruit actually grows on a tree. Breadfruit is so versatile and there's so many ways to prepare it, but one of my favorite ways and one of the healthiest ways to prepare breadfruit is simply to roast it. It has a starchy potato-like flavor and can be seasoned to your liking. Glycemic index is actually quite low on breadfruit, and as a result, I think that makes it one of the more superior starches out there. We're gonna put breadfruit on the A tier today. Now, there is a starch that you will find as a side on various Caribbean dishes, especially in Barbados, and I'm talking about macaroni pie, the Caribbean's favorite casserole. Macaroni pie is made by using long string macaroni in a baking tray covered in cheese and baked. And as you can imagine, this thing tastes amazing. But as you can also imagine, this thing is definitely not good for you. High starch, high fat, minimal protein. We're gonna go ahead and put macaroni pie in the D tier today. And finally, it would not be a Wellness Without Borders episode without highlighting some of the region's desserts. Now listen, you can't ever really expect a dessert to rank high on the list, and that's why all three of these desserts are gonna find themselves in the D tier, but they deserve honorable mentions because they are so damn delicious. Caribbean desserts like bread pudding, guava cheese, and black cake can certainly be enjoyed in moderation, but we're gonna wanna make sure that we keep those as low as possible. They're high in sugar, they're high in fat, there's really no nutritional value of any kind, but it's food for the soul. Sorry bread pudding, sorry guava cheese, sorry black cake, you are going to find yourselves in the D tier today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our Caribbean food tier list. Do you agree with where I put all of these foods? Let me know in the comments down below. Overall, when we think about all of these factors combined, as much as I love Caribbean food, I would probably rank its overall health rating at about 6.5 out of 10. I think ways that Caribbean cuisine can be improved is by increasing the number of vegetables that are consumed and being mindful of the amount of starch that is consumed, opting for pan searing or grilling or even baking instead of frying. Most of all, be cautious of the sweets and the sugar. That's all for today's episode, everybody. Thank you so much for watching Wellness Without Borders Caribbean Edition. I will see you in the next video.